The early 70s brought about what we now call supergroups, and what made them super was the fact that they wrote a lot of their songs. The band had a lot of members, they played their own instruments, and performed at the highest level. My favorite of all time was Earth, Wind & Fire. This band reached the pinnacle of success under the founder and band member Maurice White. They recorded 17 compilation albums, 4 live albums, 21 studio albums, and 19 video albums. The band performed high-flying stunts during their concerts, but for some reason, it was a revolving door of musicians. This band was on top, and one day the music stopped. Why would a number one band stop recording and performing together? And why were there so many members to come and go? We need to know. So welcome back to the House of Nostalgia, where we talk about all entertainment from our past and in some cases, even our present. The founder of the band, Maurice White, was born December the 19th, 1941 in Memphis, Tennessee. He got his start in church, singing in the church choir, and by the age of 12, he began to play the drums. Now, in the late 50s, he played drums for Booker T. Jones while he was still in high school. Booker T., who was also a Memphis native, was very young himself, because this was way before the band Booker T. and the MGs. He left Memphis after graduating from high school, moved to Chicago, and enrolled in the Chicago Conservatory College. This was a very prestigious music school that operated between 1857 and 1981. Maurice started taking jobs playing the drums and ended up playing percussions for Legendary Chess Records, where he got to play with a lot of their future Hall of Fame artists. He played with the Ramsey Lewis Trio for 3 years, and this was a turning point in the future of his career. He stated, "Ramsey helped shape my musical vision beyond just the music," Maurice explained. "I learned about performance and staging." After departing the Ramsey Lewis Trio in 1969, Maurice created his band, the Salty Peppers, with singer Wade Flemings and keyboardist Don Whitehead. And this trio formed a songwriting partnership. The Salty Peppers signed a record deal with Capitol Records and created the song La La Time. It did okay, it gave them hope, but the second song didn't do too well. They left Chicago and moved to Los Angeles. Maurice named the group Earth, Wind & Fire, which was 3/4 of nature's element, with water being left out because there was no water in Maurice's zodiacal chart. He rebuilt the band by recruiting his brother Verdine on bass, Leslie Drayton, Michael Beale on guitar, Chester Washington, Sherry Scott on vocals, Alex Thomas on horns, and Ballard Williams on percussions. They recorded 2 albums by 1971. In Maurice White's book with Herb Powell, My Life with Earth, Wind & Fire, he wrote, "This moment started in a series of dreams that I had in 1969. These dreams, which I believe were given to me from the divine, inspired me to form a band that would uplift the human spirit." Now, I believe that 100%, because it's the same dream or premonition that most of us get when we are guided to do something, but most people can't hear it. It is times when you don't hear a thing, but you are doing what you're supposed to do, and you will understand why you were doing it later. I'm pretty sure there's 1 or 2 people in that band who had the same dream that they were going to be a part of one of the greatest bands of all time. I can deep dive into that, but not today. During the late 60s and early 70s, he could have made music that sounded like everybody else at that time. And they did have a couple of songs that sounded like a couple of other bands, but not a whole album. That could have also brought them success. But for how long? They had something else in mind. I feel like Maurice was not satisfied with the sound or the chemistry of the band. All of this was done at lightning speed. In 1969, he created and recorded under the name Salty Peppers as a trio. By 1970, the Salty Peppers were done. Maurice left Chicago and relocated to Los Angeles, formed a new band with a new name, signed with Warner Brothers, and recorded 2 albums. The introduction album, Earth, Wind and Fire, had a little Sly and the Family Stone influence. It was evident on Fan the Fire. And on the second album, Need a Love, the song Energy starts out sounding like it's a jazz song. Then it kind of goes into spoken word, but surprisingly ends up sounding like an instrumental song. They ended up with the top 40 hit off of Need of Love, I Think About Loving You. This song to me unfortunately sounds like some of the other bands that were out at the time. They also did the soundtrack to the groundbreaking Melvin Van Peebles film, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. Maurice was not satisfied with the sound of this band, and it could have been the chemistry, I don't know. But what we do know is that he had to fulfill his dream. So he went back to the drawing board and got rid of everyone except his brother, Verdine White. This time he added Philip Bailey, Roland Batista, Larry Dunn, Ralph Johnson, Jessica Cleaves, and Ronnie Laws. The band auditioned for managers Joe Ruffalo and Bob Cavallo, which led to their Rockefeller Center performance where they performed for the president of Columbia Records, Clive Davis. Clive signed them to Columbia and bought out their contract from Warner Brothers. This union resulted in their first album under Columbia Records, Last Days and Times. This album made it to number 15 on Billboard. The album cover artwork was done by Marty Klarwein. Maurice was into the godly sectors of astrology, religion, and physical health. So every album title cover from here on out represented that in some way. And when they did a group album of photos, sometimes it would be epic. They Don't See is a gospel record in an Earth, Wind, and Fire kind of way. Make It With You was my favorite song on the album. The album was released in 1971. And it does give that nostalgic early 70s sound. The instruments used at the beginning of Power sound like the quiet before the jazz storm, so to speak. This album is different from the albums to come. In 1973, the band released their first gold-selling album that went platinum, Head to the Sky. From the start of this album with the song Evil, you start to realize just how exceptional this band is, and that the album before this one was not just a little talent mixed with luck. This album is what started building their staple sound. It is a graduation to the next level, and even though Maurice was into jazz, you start to get a sense that he has more to give us. And it is beyond jazz, soul, rock, and R&B. So you simply can't wait for more. And that is the feeling that listeners get from this album. And Keep Your Head to the Sky, you get the magic of Philip Bailey's 4-octave range falsetto voice mixed with the rest of the band, and it blows you away. Ronnie Laws and Roland Batista left the band before the release of that album and were replaced by Andrew Woolford, Al McKay, and Johnny Graham. Jessica Cleaves left the band and his brother Fred White later joined. I would have loved to have been able to see what Ronnie Laws' talent would have brought to this band because he wasn't there long enough. But Ronnie Laws had a vision of his own. In 1974, the band released their platinum-selling album, Open Your Eyes. They let you know that they can take you to the dance floor with the hit Mighty Mighty, and they also give you the classic song Devotion. So now we have the band. Larry Dunn on piano and organ, Johnny Graham guitar, Al McKay guitar, Philip Bailey, vocals and percussions, Ralph Johnson, vocals, drums, and percussions, Andrew Woolford, saxophonist, Berdine White, bass, Maurice White, vocals, kalimba, and drums, and Fred White, drums. This is what ended the revolving door of musicians. I want to touch on the 1974 Ramsey Lewis Sun Goddess album. There was mutual respect between Maurice and Ramsey Lewis and Earth, Wind & Fire. Maurice admitted that he learned a lot from working with the Ramsey Lewis trio, and this collaboration opened the door for Ramsey to be introduced to young 20-something music listeners. This mega album went across the board for Ramsey: jazz, pop, disco, and R&B. This band had 14 platinum albums, countless gold singles and compilation albums, and a few of them went 3 times platinum. They had hit after hit: Shining Star, Sing a Song, That's the Way of the World, Can't Hide Love, Get Away, Saturday Night, Serpentine Fire, Fantasy, Got to Get You Into My Life, Boogie Wonderland, After the Love Is Gone, Let's Groove, and Fall in Love with Me, September, and many more. They were performing at sold-out arenas. They were known for their high-flying stunts. They were at the top. Everybody wanted to work with them, perform with them. They wanted them to be a part of whatever they had going on. Everybody loved Earth, Wind & Fire. When the 80s came in, things changed. Honestly, different instruments that seemed to put people in awe was starting to take a back seat to what I would call instant music. It was the electric sound, and it was blowing up. It was the 80s coming in loud. Maurice started to add this technique to Earth, Wind & Fire, and the band released another platinum-selling album called Rise. In 1983, after the release of Electric Universe, the music stopped. The band stopped performing and making music together. Some members left before this. Johnny Graham left in 81, and Al McKay left in 1980, and started performing and producing for other well-known artists. They had been performing together from 1971 until 1983. It was time for everyone to go their separate ways, but it wasn't a breakup, it was planned. The band was supposed to take a break and come back together. Was it needed? Absolutely. They were too talented not to branch out and do other things. Constantly traveling and performing, I can imagine that just tiring you out. Larry Dunn did not return. He performed on numerous recordings with Ramsey Lewis, Ronnie Laws, Morris Day, and Raphael Sadiq, just to name a few. And Fred White did not return after his break. Roland Batista performed with everybody, and I am not exaggerating. He returned to the band in 1981, but he didn't return after the break. During this time, Philip Bailey had a huge hit in 1984 with Phil Collins called Easy Lover. The song went number 1 just about everywhere in the world, and he won a Grammy for one of his gospel albums, Triumph. Maurice produced for other artists like Barbra Streisand, Neil Diamond, The Emotions, Jennifer Holliday, and Cher. He also released his self-titled album with the hit I Need You. So there was a big change for the band after the break, but as they always say, the show must go on. In 1987, the band made their return with the album Touch the World, which went gold. What a triumph for a 4-year hiatus. This was just what they needed. On March the 6th, 2000, Earth, Wind & Fire was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The band recorded 7 more albums, with their last recorded album released in 2014, Holiday. Just 2 years later, the music world was stunned and saddened by the passing of Maurice White in 2016. Other band members that passed away was Roland Batista in 2012 and Andrew Woolford in 2022. Fred White in 2023. They were original members. Other members to pass away were Sheldon Reynolds in 2023 and Robert Brookings in 2009. May they all rest in peace. The band received 6 Grammys, 1 Lifetime Achievement Award, and 4 American Music Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They received every award it is to receive in music, and the band is still performing in concerts today and going strong. In 2019, Earth, Wind & Fire were given the Kennedy Center honor for their lifetime achievement in performing arts and contributions to American culture. The band created some of the most exceptional music we will ever hear. This music will play on for years and years to come, and people who know the story will celebrate the man, Maurice White, who brought these musicians together with a vision to uplift the human spirit. And that was done. I would like to thank you all for watching my video on Earth, Wind & Fire.